Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Looks like we are live. And the question, of course, today becomes, what the heck are we doing? What the heck are we doing? Guess my webcam's a little bit cockeyed, definitely. Okay. Well, I decided to just jump on and start live streaming because today I am essentially just winging it a bit. Over here on this screen, hopefully I'm not going to be a complete bonehead and forget to switch between screens today. Super apologize for doing that yesterday, at least twice. I think it was 3 times actually, and I mean that's pretty lowbrow YouTube behavior, isn't it? You know, to actually completely disenfranchise your audience by having them looking at the wrong screen. That's a bit embarrassing. So there's really a couple things going on today. Number one, in regard to crowdfunding, we are moving forward with a second video that focuses on the story and the characters. I do want to relate, though, actually, some people have expressed here and there that they appreciate it when I kind of explain some of the little niggly details of workflow that can bite you in the butt when things go wrong. That I sit here and think, you know, you guys have got to be so completely bored with this information. And then what invariably tends to happen is somebody chimes in the chat and says, no, this is useful, this is helpful. And so I'm trying to be cognizant of that and believe you know, and take you guys at your word when you say this stuff isn't necessarily terribly boring. But I want to explain here something that can go wrong when you're trying to embrace a procedural workflow. Now, the basic rule with a procedural workflow is that if you can have it and if you can get away with it, it's generally preferred. Okay, so what do I mean by a procedural workflow? Well, one example would be in this edit, for example. If, let's just say, just for pretend, if this clip right here was in fact an image sequence on my hard drive, let's say. So this is just a sequence of images and it plays back. Okay. If these images that comprise this little clip were actually baked into this edit, let's say this edit is a file, which of course it is, but let's just say that this little sequence of images actually is baked into it. And so once it's in the editor, let's say, this is all there is. There's just the stuff you've chosen to reveal, maybe with some tails that are cropped off, but basically it's baked in here. So now what makes that not procedural? Well, that's not procedural because if I go back to Tahoma or Krita or whatever program I animated it in and re-render the image sequence, then it wouldn't update here. Okay? So the basic rule is that generally a procedural workflow is a good thing, and the exchange or the trade-off has to do with performance. Okay, so I kind of bumped into that headlong yesterday, and here's why. This is a video about the story and the characters in the show. Okay, so at some point here, probably before too long, I'll go ahead and play it. It's a couple minutes, and so this is an adjunct to the crowdfunding campaign. There's a basic pitch video, and then there's going to be this video that's all about the story and the characters. It's not very long. It just kind of recaps who the cast is and what their kind of general roles are in the story. In other words, it doesn't drill real deep. I'm not speaking to screenwriters here. I'm speaking to Joe Sixpack, who just thinks the idea of this cartoon is kind of cool, you know. So so what I bumped into was, before I started editing this, I actually took the entire first episode of the show and rendered it. Okay, so let me pull that up and I'll show you what that looks like. actually, I'll just pull up episode 2 because that makes explaining it simpler. Okay, so episode 2, as you can see, this is all storyboard. And the only thing actually produced is the last section of episode 2. It's about, what is it? Yeah, almost 10 minutes. 9 minutes, 10 minutes of show. Okay, so when I started editing the crowdfunding stuff, what I did was I rendered this out. Because I figured if this is actually a video file in the same folder actually as the crowdfund stuff, it's gonna it's gonna be on the solid state drive. It's gonna perform better, yada yada yada. So just for editing, grabbing snippets of the episode, it makes sense to have it pre-rendered. So I did the same thing with episode 1 and episode 2, with the caveat that episode 2 only pre-rendered the stuff that was actually useful, meaning this section of the show. Well, let me tell you something. If the rule would be kind of this, if there's any possibility, even a 2% possibility, that some of the items in this video, for example, are going to be changed or improved, then it's axiomatic that they will be changed or improved. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say, but what that means is, if I go into episode 1, for example, which I can take right here, this is actually the Vegas editing of episode 1, because you can nest scenes inside other scenes in Vegas. So what I just said was, if there's even a possibility that in the course of putting together this crowdfund campaign, that I'm going to go into referenced in the crowdfunding video, I just broke my crowdfunding video, because the shot that you're looking at here is not, in fact, a live snapshot of what's going on in the episode. It's the rendered version of it. So my point is, there's a rule here, and the rule is, if it's even slightly possible that in the course of doing this crowdfunding stuff, that the episode that I'm drawing the footage from is going to change, then you can bet your butt it's going to change. And what happens is, what that means is, now I've got to, every single time I make even one little tiny change in the edit of the show, I have to go re-render it. Otherwise, those changes won't propagate through to this, this little promotional video. So the basic rule is this. If it's at all possible to work procedurally, you generally want to. And then the question is, are you going to have a performance hit? Like, for example, here what we have is, I believe this would be the rendered episode, pieces of the rendered episode 1. This, on the other hand, is the actual Vegas edit of episode 1. So if I open this up to edit it in Vegas and change anything, then when I close it, everything will magically update here. And I can use this to re-edit this video over here. So what that means in essence is, the good news and the bad news is, the bad news is all of these clips are the rendered components of episode 1. Because of some extra work I did yesterday, all of these clips are actually taken from the Vegas edit of episode 1. So if something changed in the show, it would magically update here, whereas over here it wouldn't. Well, let me be honest. I don't want to take the time to replace all these clips with pieces from the actual show edit, and I would if I had to. So if I bump into something that's changed that I want to update here, then I'll go ahead and replace them on a piecemeal basis. But this kind of speaks to the quality thing I was talking about yesterday. Once you bake your results down and commit to them, I found this with in filmmaking too. It always happens, is once you commit to a given output, if you will, or a given result or a given render, it is absolutely axiomatic that it will change, and you will wind up having to re-render it. Oftentimes, like dozens of times, as a matter of fact. So now this, let me see what this is. Yeah, see this is kind of unfortunate too. These are all clips of that are pre-rendered. Yeah, so I really kind of wish I hadn't done that, but I just wasn't really thinking. Well, the other problem is, let me explain this even better. If you think about it, everything in the everything in this video that's taken from episode 2, which all this stuff is, think about it. This clip that is chopped together to make this little video is taken from a section of episode 2 that was pre-rendered. Okay, so let me just show that, because this is actually kind of important. It's one of those things that, like I said, it's one of those little niggly details that I think must be really boring to people, but is actually really critical to your workflow if your workflow is getting complicated. Okay, so what I did was I pre-rendered basically this section. Well, what if something in this section was updated or changed, which, by the way, it has. There's several shots that have been improved a bit just since yesterday. Well, if I want the crowdfunding pitch video to reflect those changes, I've got to re-render it. Well, what if the length of something changed? What if I changed the edit slightly? Think about it. What if I made this one shot like a little bit longer? You realize what would happen? When I re-render it, every single shot in the crowdfunding video is actually going to be wrong. It's going to be out of time because everything got time shifted. You know, that's a really, really big danger. It's funny because it's the danger you're going to bump into without exception every single time, you know. It's really a big deal. And the other big deal I kind of bumped into was, because I did re-render it one time, is I realized, wait a second, when I rendered this the first time, I didn't like just hit the R key and put a region around the render area, which was kind of stupid, because what if I have to re-render it? I better make sure that I'm actually starting and finishing in the exact same place. Otherwise, all the footage that's cut into the pitch video is going to be showing the wrong clips because they're all in a different place in time. So it's just one of those things that you just run into all the time, and you know, it's really easy to not learn your lesson. And I would like to think I would have learned my lesson, but so anyway, here's what we have today. There's a few things we're doing, and so this video is actually an adjunct to the crowdfund pitch video that's talking about the story and characters. So I'm going to go ahead and play that because I want to review it myself to just kind of make some mental notes and whatnot of what's going on here. So.
I'm David Matthew Weiss, creator of Salt and Light, and in this video we'll talk about the story and characters. Salt and Light takes place in Newsy, which once had been a land of peace and prosperity, but it suffered drought and famine ever since the current king, Vespigi, usurped the throne from his older brother. With that backdrop, our main character is Melchizedek. We usually call him Mel. He's a pretty typical 15-year-old. Adopted and raised by Asher. We'll talk about Asher shortly. Mel is insecure. He's trying to see where he fits in the world. He's impulsive, naive, and idealistic. In a later episode, we'll learn about Mel's mysterious origins and why he's being raised by Asher. Asher is essentially a monk, and he's made it his mission to feed the poor and be a voice of wisdom and spirituality in a time of hardship. Everyone knows Asher and generally likes and appreciates his role in the community. He has the ear of the king, but he's an irritation to the king's chief advisor, Golek. Golek is pretty much the villain. He's a snaky guy who always cozies up to whoever is in power. He despises Asher because Asher's pronouncements of wisdom tend to undermine Golek's nefarious plans. Those plans involve Vespar, the prince. Like Mel, Vespar is a confused and insecure adolescent who generally goes with the flow until he learns of his father's plan, it's Golek's plan really, for an arranged marriage to Tianara. Tianara is Mel's opposite. She's a practical, action-oriented, somewhat cynical girl. Like Vespar, she's caught up in the marriage scheme against her will, thanks to her opportunistic mother. When Tianara runs away, a comedy of errors lands her in the company of Mel and a street-smart orphan named Luca. Luca's had to survive by his wits, accompanied by a monkey named, well, Monkey. Despite his youth, Luca can sometimes be the voice of clarity and wisdom. Circumstances force Mel, Tianara, Luca, and Monkey to cooperate despite their misgivings about one another, and they wind up on a quest that none of them fully understand, pursued by a vengeful Prince Vespar who's always one step behind. For me, I've come to love the characters, the heroes and the villains, and I'm looking forward to crafting a tale that's surprising and inspiring.
Okay, not horrible. I will say this: the item I was discussing, and by the way, hey Chris, good morning, David Bird, welcome to the party. Haven't seen you here before, I don't think. So what I was describing about a procedural workflow, we've actually just bumped into right here, because this very shot, actually this whole sequence of shots, is from the render of episode 2. But guess what? If we go back over here to the nested episode 2, what we will discover is that actually, looky here, all 3 of those shots look different. The timing's been adjusted. This was done just this morning. The font here at the end. So yeah, all 3 of these shots are changed. So that means that in order to match the well, here's what I need to do. I'm actually going to split this, and we might as well just drag it back this way. We might as well. We're going to replace this. So what we're doing is we're replacing a baked-in workflow with a procedural workflow. Okay, so if I drag this down here, what we see is we've got basically from right here, we've got shots that are colored wrong, because that's the rendered version of episode 2, whereas this is the live version of episode 2. You can see it's not a big difference. I mean, in a crowd pitch video, you could definitely get away with not making this update. You know, it's not that important, but it's a good illustration of the problem I was talking about. Another thing here, of course, is okay. So this is being played back at roughly 1.7 x speed. So let's do the same thing here. Let's change its pace to 1.7, and then all we have to do is drag this up and out and drag. Let's see what our starting point is here, by the way. Okay, so it's when Vespar approaches the fire. So if we drag that, yeah, that's about the same place. So we grab that, drag that there. And now
Pursued by a vengeful Prince Vespar who's always one step behind. For me, I've come to
so
love.
cool. So now that shot, which is from the pre-rendered episode 2, has now been replaced with the live one. So on the off chance that anything in episode 2 changed again, this would just automatically update. It's always going to reflect the actual state of episode 2. So if it was up to me, you know, I mean, it is up to me, obviously. But if I had it to do over again, I would have done all of the editing of the crowdfund stuff using the live versions of the show. So that's that. I will save that. I'm thinking as far as this video goes, I think that the low-key delivery approach of the initial crowdfund pitch video probably was appropriate. This video feels a little lackadaisical in the sense that it's not really, it's a little more low-key than I really am. Okay, I'm usually
Story and characters. Salt and Light takes place in Newsy, which once had been a land of peace and prosperity, but it suffered drought and famine ever since the current king, Vespigi, usurped the throne from his older brother.
Well, and you know, one of the interesting things about the crowdfund, about this video, the characters and story video, is this whole section went from about 30 seconds to 10 yesterday. I'm like, man, this is so boring watching all this backdrop of the show. You know, who cares? All right, can we get this wrapped into 10 seconds and just get the heck out of it and start focusing on the characters? So I did that yesterday. So now the question becomes, what the heck are we doing today? I will say this. I've been going through scenes, and tightening things up and taking the opportunity to get even ever more cozy with Tahoma, and particularly the timeline, because I've generally been reticent to use the timeline in Tahoma or OpenToonz. I usually use the X sheet, but when I work in Krita, I'm always working with a horizontal timeline. So I figured, all right, Dave, at some point you need to just kind of get in there and start fiddling with it. So I mentioned this last week. My sense is that as time goes by, I'm probably going to be using Tahoma more and Krita less. I'm pretty sure that's true, mainly just because of stability. I just get so sick and tired of Krita crashing, you know, and it's always crashed. I've been using it for years now, and it's just a really unstable piece of software, and it always has been. And it did improve with version 4. That's true, but not enough to call it a stable program. I mean, not really even close. So that's that. Okay, so what have we got here? I've been working backwards, and I would say, see, the other thing I've got, basically, here's the deal with crowdfunding. I've done the pitch video, and I've done the story and characters video, so the only thing left to do is the budget. Now, I covered, for those of you who are watching this, I covered the budget exhaustively in a live stream 2 days ago, so there's no need to recap that here. But what I need to do is create a concise version of that that's maybe 2 minutes long, that just breaks down what the budget requirements are going to be. So anyway, that's that. Now it's time to see what the heck is going on with our show, and probably the appropriate course of action would be to work backwards yet again. Alright, so let's go to episode 2. And now, say work backwards. That actually wouldn't be a horrible idea to work with that shot. But let me just kind of see where we're at here. Let me see. Ah, yes, the wedding. The wedding. So this whole sequence is the wedding, and it's a long sequence that, you know, the bulk of episode 2 really revolves around the wedding. It really does. So, I am going to say, yeah, it really does. I mean, what happens is, you know, Mel is sent into town, and there's a mission critical letter that he's got to deliver. Absolutely essential that nothing happens to this letter. And of course, what happens is Monkey sees this bag in Mel's pocket. I don't know if you guys can see that very well, but and basically the long and the short of it is that Monkey comes along, grabs the bag out of Mel's pocket. Well, the bag had the letter in it, and so now Mel's got to chase after Monkey, and that leads him to this tent where the whole wedding thing is starting to come together, and where TNR is waiting for her husband to come and claim her, basically. So you have, that's what episode 2 is largely about, is the comedy of errors surrounding the wedding, and it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of crazy things that happen. So I say we go forward. Let's go forward. So this is shot number 410, which, since it's a painting, I'm gonna say this was done in Krita. So let's jump over here, and, well, no, actually, let's stay back here for a moment and let's just look here in the Fast Stone image viewer at image 4, or at scene 410. Let's see what we have, if this was ever rendered. Okay, it was not rendered, so that means it's just a standalone Krita image. So cool. All right, let's rock and roll. So what we'll do is we'll open that baby up in Krita. You know, we've got a command decision we got to make. Are we going to move over to Tahoma, or are we going to stay in Krita? I really want to move over to Tahoma for this shot. It's an animation heavy shot, no question about it. So, loading up Krita. So actually, probably the smart way to go here would be to just let me just transition back here. I'm actually thinking that the scenes, since it's obviously in our show edit, we must have a clip down here in the storyboard that represents the beginning of the scene. Yep, there it is. So if we take 410 and we drag it into Tahoma and tell Tahoma to import it instead of load it, then what's going to happen is Tahoma will make a local copy of that image, and so we don't have to worry about its location on the hard drive anymore, so to speak. So let me just say this. Let's go File. We'll create a new scene just for completeness, and then what I'm going to do is drag this guy into here. Okay, and we're not going to load it. If we load it, it's going to be we're going to be referencing the image that is actually on the hard drive in the storyboard. If we import it, again, Tahoma's going to make a local copy of it. Now, this is an HD image, so the first thing I'm going to do is well, actually, the first thing I'm going to do is think, because as I consider this, so what you guys are seeing today, right now, what this is going to be, there's nothing glamorous about this, okay? This is in real time thinking about the actual problems that I'm going to bump into working with this shot, and what do I need to do to make it, work as well as possible. The first thing that I can see is that this image needs to be chopped into layers, because when let's do this. Let's scale this down. Let's not scale the actual image. Let's just scale it as an animation function, so that we can change our mind later, obviously. So we'll just scale this down so it takes up the full broadcast HD frame. And if I hit the N key, now I'm seeing it at actual size. Okay. So what I can totally see here is that Mel is going to pop into the scene here. He's going to duck into this alley, poke his head around here, probably do a little smart alecky walk across here. I'm thinking, and by the way, this is a very ambitious version of, hey, Golden Slime, good morning. This is a very ambitious idea of what might go into the shot. Now, this is a money shot, no question about it. This is a money shot, meaning it's a really long shot that has a lot of animation any way you slice it. So, the question really just is, how far do we want to go? If Mel's going to pop out over here, duck into this corner, dance across here, duck behind here, and then zoom into this alley back here, and then poke his head around this brick wall, which, by the way, is pretty much what the original plan was. And the reason being that Luca and Monkey are actually sitting here in this dark alley, just kind of chilling out. And so Mel gets surprised when he's peeking around the corner here. All of a sudden, somebody talks to him, and it scares him, because he didn't notice Mel and Monkey behind him. So this is where most of the action in subsequent scenes is going to take place. To which you say, so what? And the answer is, well, it would seem to me that this background image therefore has to be cut into pieces, because we've got to be able to take Mel and have him hide behind this wall, poke around. Basically you need this to be cut out. You probably need this to be cut out. And that's probably it. And then you're going to want to do some extra painting to clean up the overlap area, just in case you're going to do like a camera move or something. So that says to me that step number one is, let's at least look in Krita and see what the layering situation was for this background painting. Because it could be it's already broken up nicely into layers for us, right? So that means we need to look at 410. Alright. And there it is. Let's see what we have. Okay. And what just happened? Well, what just happened was we cut and pasted that sketch of the action from Krita into Tahoma, and that's it. It looks like we don't have much in the way of layering. And so potentially, are we going to regret that? You know, are we going to regret not breaking it up into layers within Krita? Probably not. I'm going to say, since just because of the direction I'm kind of going here, I think it would be fun to try doing it in Tahoma. So, which speaks to our strategy for doing so. Okay, well, what is our strategy for doing so? What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to say, look, this drawing is going to have, it's going to be broken into the background, the house, and probably this third building. So I'm just going to go DDD. And then I'm going to wait because it looks like Tahoma doesn't understand what D means on a Friday. Is today Friday? It is. Oh my gosh. Can't believe it's Friday. Okay. So, okay. Interesting. All right. So here's what's going on. I'm actually super glad I did this. Okay. We're getting into some nuance here that is important to understand. If you, I did probably the worst thing possible, which was to drag and drop the image into Tahoma. It would have been better to cut and paste it from Krita, actually, because then Tahoma would have known to treat it internally as one image in an image sequence. When you drag and drop and then do the import thing, it doesn't understand that it's a sequence. So we're going to fix that right now. All right. First of all, I'm going to save all. Now, when I hit save all, let me look at the number again. This is 410, 410. Okay. So let's just save this as shot 410. So we sort of have to trick Tahoma, unfortunately. Okay, so now if we come back here, what we're going to see is the extras folder right here will now have that image in it, as we can see right here. Now if I commit the cardinal sin of renaming this to 410.0001 ping. Now what's going to happen is Tahoma is going to be confused when I reload this scene. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reload this. And as you can see, Tahoma's confused because it's not finding 410.ping. It's fine. So what we can do now, though, the good news is we could redrag and drop it, obviously. I think actually if I just add a period here, I think that tells Tahoma that it's an image sequence. Let's find out. Nope, it just says wrong path. So what I'm going to have to do is actually browse for it. So in the extras folder, this is what we're looking for. We'll choose that, and it still says wrong path. So now that's interesting. That's the problem I ran into the other day. That is, so I don't know if Darren's around. I suspect not, but that would be patently a bug. That's a bug. Maybe, yeah, because it's got a minus in front of it. I wonder if the minus is freaking it out a bit. So let me grab a completely different image and see what happens. Okay, so it switches to it. It seems to me the other day that it did the same thing, and I think that even though it said wrong path, I thought it still worked when I reopened the project. I don't really remember. Getting a lot done here in a short time, guys. So let's just reopen this and see what happens. Okay, yeah, it's still confused. So we'll just do it this way. We'll hit delete, and we will just redrag and drop from the extras folder, and now Tahoma knows that it's an image sequence, and I suspect if I hit the D key, yep, it'll keep adding duplicates. So that's really what we were after in the first place. I just want to make duplicates so that each of the duplicates can be modified in various ways that we will see here shortly. So the first thing I'm going to do is isolate that building. So I'm just going to hit the E key. I tend to always use the eraser in lasso mode. I like lasso mode. So the important thing is going to be this area right here, because I mean, like, the ground probably was not that important because Mel, well, all that matters is the stuff that Mel has to go behind. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. If he's got to go behind it, then we need to have a clean edge that he can actually hide behind, right? So we still have the eraser selected, so I'm just going to go like this. All right, so there's that. Is anything going on in the chat? Still got 3 concurrent viewers. It looks like stupid OBS is disconnecting and reconnecting like there's no tomorrow. Okay, so what we're going to do here, just so you guys understand, okay, the X sheet or the timeline in Tahoma is essentially a window. It's a window through which you look at images and image sequences and things like that. So there's actually no hard-coded relationship between this image sequence and the sequence that might play back here on the timeline. Now there can be. So if I go like this, obviously I can play them in sequence, but I don't have to. So what I'm doing is I'm keeping these all together as an image sequence, even though what I'm ultimately actually going to do is this. I'm going to put it in a separate level so that I can layer these guys up and get the same result as the composite painting. Get it? I know you do. So there's that. We'll just delete that again. All right, so that's what we're doing. We're going to go ahead and just keep isolating the components of it. Let me think here. The doorway. What about the doorway? We probably should put a hole in there as well, shouldn't we? Okay. So I'm going to take this. I know Mel's going to go behind the... He's going to go behind this wall, so... meaning this wall here, the green. And this is going to be a little trickier because we've got to give him the ability also to get behind this tent pole. So, yeah, this is all just grunt work, folks. Nothing. Nothing too glamorous about that, baby. Okay, this is kind of interesting. Definitely makes the shot kind of interesting, having the little ditties hanging around that, you know, in other words, some of the stuff will be in front of you and some of it will be behind you. So that's why you sort of have to plan a little bit. And of course, worst case scenario is we can always chop it into even more little pieces, right? So no big deal. All right. Okay, so now this little section here looks like this was intended to be just kind of shadow, really. So this is in fact transparent. So once we get this broke up into pieces, obviously one could say, well, geez, Dave, why don't you, you know, create it in pieces in the first place? Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that. That hadn't crossed my mind. All right, so B key, I'm going to grab this brush, and I'm actually going to, here we go, a little hiccup there. I want that to be 0. I'm going to hit the R key, sample that color, and now I'm going to go ahead and actually redraw this tent pole. the rear temple. Back here, like that. Now, again, this is one of those things that I may regret, because if you think about it, if Mel was poking his head around this corner right here, it's probably the case, and we can always adjust this later, but it's probably the case that we would want his head to cover this stuff. He would be behind this, and he would be behind this, but he wouldn't be behind this. And another thing that makes this kind of stuff a little bit complicated, this is actually the most complicated thing from sort of animation logistics standpoint, is you've got a character that's both behind and in front of something at the same time. Because his head would poke out here, but what if his hand, what if he kind of put his hand around the corner, that type of thing. Then his hand would be in front. So you're always having to deal with the sort of stacking of the layers and thinking about how things are going to go and where they're going to be. But on balance, for the most part, when Mel comes across here, he's going to be in front of the tent. So with that in mind, I'm going to just erase everything else for now. And we'll isolate some of these other elements in some of those other duplicate drawings I made. Generally, just figuring out as I go what I really need and what I really want to do. Now, here's an example where, there's really no reason I have to do this, because it's not like anybody's going to be going behind the roof. So that's just, 15 seconds for completeness, really. All right, what about over here? I tell you, I actually think what probably should happen here is let's just freaking well paint out the building and see how it goes. So let's have some fun with our oil paintbrush. Hit the B key, and in this drawing, what I'm going to do is sample this red. And the first step, okay, I'm looking at the opacity of this. I'm not super impressed. So for the moment, I'm going to make this brush as big as possible. I just want to get this blocked in so it's not distracting me. I just want to get this stupid thing erased. Get it out of there so I don't have to see it. You'd be surprised how helpful that can be. It's the idea of polishing a turd. If something's not working, it's generally a pretty lousy idea to... Oh, there's an issue. There's an interesting issue. We'll deal with that later. The wall is not it's not level. Well, I'll tell you, whoever the stonemason is that built in path tool in Krita is quite useful. Because if I was working in Krita right now, I would literally just draw the shape and poof, it's filled, right? So, and I could still do that. So, not complaining, just saying. Even after all this time, my view of my workflow is always still evolving. I'm still, and the main reason is because of the quest for stability. The reality is that, Tahoma's a somewhat unstable program, and Krita is a very unstable program. And so, if it wasn't for that, I swear I would just hunker down and just be happy as a clam working in these programs. I just wouldn't think about it. I'd only be thinking about the work, the animation work or whatever. But you can't. This stuff blows up often enough that you have to be cognizant of the fact that it's going to blow up. It's going to blow up. You are going to lose work, that sort of a thing. So therefore, kind of against my wishes, I'm always still thinking about, well, what program can I replace this with? Now, of course, I get fanboys on the chat that will say, how come you're not using Blender 2.8? I am using Blender 2.8, actually. Specifically 2.1a. I like Blender 2.1a. I've got it customized to my satisfaction pretty well. Actually, that stroke was wrong. And I do actually think I'll be coming back to Blender 2.81 to a degree because it's really stable. I mean, it's hard to blow up Blender. And all versions of Blender, I would say for the last, 10 years, extremely stable. Very, very hard to blow it up. Okay, so let's just kind of start getting some of these guys in here. So this is interesting. Okay, so I'm going to turn pressure off and see what that does to the color. Yeah, that's probably what we want. Probably don't want that. So what's interesting about this is the pressure sensitivity is actually still working. So in Tahoma, when you have at least with a My paintbrush, if you turn pressure on, you get pressure sensitivity in regard to size and essentially the density of your color. If you turn pressure off, you don't get pressure sensitivity in regard to the density of the color, but you still do get pressure. Well, okay, maybe you don't. I thought you, okay, I guess I read that wrong. Forget what I was going to say. Yeah, so for me at this moment, I'm going to just kind of favor leaving pressure sensitivity off. Now, you can look at this as a strength or a weakness, but there's a characteristic here of the My paintbrushes called, what is it? Slow tracking. Slow tracking per dab. Yeah, see, you can see slow position tracking, I'm going to see what happens actually just for kicks if we turn this off. Generally speaking, on this particular paintbrush, I'm not really looking for stabilization, and that's better. That's way better actually. I'm going to leave it that way. Yeah, this brush does not need stabilization. That just, all it does is hamper the performance for no good reason, really. When I'm using this brush, I'm just freewheel painting, really. So one of the things I'm kind of doing this morning for my own reasons is just kind of giving myself some time to just do some background painting and stuff. So where Tahoma is going to come up short compared to Krita is, for example, if I wanted to isolate this region and, do a curves operation to tweak the color, no, you can't. Basically, you can't. What you can do is hit F3 and go into the schematic and add a filter, and so then it'll render that way. But as far as really quick and dirty image operations that are part of the creative process of painting and touching up your painting, you're kind of hosed with Tahoma. Not the greatest in that regard. But hey, dude, you can't have everything, right? Okay, so now what I'm going to do is grab this. I'm just going to start. Actually, I'm going to grab this color and go slightly darker. Let's see what happens if we... That's a little too dark, actually. So what I'm looking for here is just a little sense of a shadow color. So it's kind of like this is... the color's a little strange, but basically this is like some kind of reddish mortar, and then all these lighter colored spots are rocks that have been mixed into the mortar, and so obviously if the sun's coming down, you're going to get a little bit of a shadow on these rocks, right? Because they're sort of sticking out of the building three-dimensionally. And then similarly, if we grab that color, we're going to have a nice, whoa, okay. Let's take this back to 0, okay. That's another thing where Tahoma is a little weaker is when it comes to like resizing your brushes. You know, I mean, there are hotkeys for it, but um, you know, I definitely prefer it in Krita where you can just hit shift. You hit shift and drag, and it resizes the brush. It just depends on your preference. Preferences. Preferences. I seem to have an itchy nose. She might say, but Dave, can we ask you this just minor question? Just a little question. You're painting all these bricks, I see. Those okay looking bricks. They're okay. But in the entire scene and in the entire composition, this is what we have. So the bricks that are just behind the building are pretty important. But once you get to about here, there is no scenario where you're ever going to see any of these bricks. Any of them. Why are you painting those bricks? And the answer is because I'm stupid and didn't think it through. Yeah, that's what I did. That's what I did. Okay, so if you're wondering what the heck this is actually going to turn into, let's take this and drag it here. And then let's take this, and just for fun, I'm going to hit the W key, and it's going to toggle between the W and the Q key are going to toggle between these images. So when I turn this on, so this is what we have. Okay, so this is not the composite drawing. This is actually just the combination of those three pieces. Okay, with one little caveat. I think this is the wrong one. Okay, so there's another yeah, this is the wrong one. Another disadvantage of Tahoma versus Krita for sure is that there is no way to isolate a layer. You can't solo a layer or a level. It'd be nice if you could. I wish you could. Okay, let me just see here. Okay, yeah. So here, what I am going to do here, though, I think, just because I'm feeling frisky, is I'm going to sample that and then hit the B key. And I'm going to go ahead and extend this. Morning, Val. My beautiful wife just walked down the stairs, which means I have to take a break. I want to take a break and go love on my woman for about a couple minutes and kind of see what's going on with the day today. So that means I am ditching you guys for a couple minutes here. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so you're being ditched. Yeah, I probably need to refill my water too. Back in 5. Okay, so who has left? Hey, Yvette. Um, so we have four more. Well, no, we've got at least between 1 and 4 more concurrent viewers when I'm sitting here doing nothing than when I'm here. Okay, so here's what happens when you have at least 3 or 4 different things going through your mind, which I do, and you say to yourself, "Where did I put my cup? Where did I set my cup? Oh, it's in my hand." Wow. How I managed to get anything done is a mystery. It's a mystery, folks. Okay, so I was just saying to Valerie, yeah, it's pretty clear that when it comes to things like background painting, you're definitely better off to work in Krita, for the reasons I've sort of mentioned here as I'm working on this. Is that painting, cloning, selecting, basically everything's easier in Krita. The good news is this: if I decided, okay, to heck with this, I'm sick of trying to do in Tahoma what's easier in Krita, I can just, if I save my project, then what happens is all of the images are in the extras folder, and I can just drag them into Krita as multiple layers, and it takes 15 seconds to repurpose this entire shot in Krita. So all of it is really no big deal. Now at the moment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a little bit of this open. Specifically, actually, I can think of a gag here that would be kind of good. The gag would be that when Mel comes, okay, so he comes around here, kind of hides behind here, pops over here, peeks his head around here, and then he kind of dances across the screen. Well, I think it'd be kind of fun if, while he's doing that, because my original idea is when he gets to be about here, the shop owner pops out, like, what's going on out there? It's just a little gag. But what would make it even better is before the shop owner pops out, when Mel's about here, what if the shop owner's head first appeared in this window, like, kind of looking out this way, and then when Mel gets over here, he pops out over here. That would be a little more clever, a little more fun, or whatever. Now, one thing I'm seeing here is you can see, for reasons I don't necessarily fully understand, the some of the color here is bleeding through. If we turn off the background image, okay, so we basically have this anomaly. I suspect when I render it, nope, it's still going to be there in the render, so that's concerning. Okay, so if you look at the yeah, it would appear to me that the opacity must have been baked into the original obviously very sketchy shot. So let's just kind of deal with that right now and fix that. The other thing I was kind of blabbing with Val about is that everything's a trade-off, right? One of the trade-offs is if you want to add some character to your animation with like a gradient that gives a little bit of life to the color. That's way easier to do in Krita. On the other hand, if every time I ever bake that into a character, it winds up biting me in the hiney, because I wind up wanting to reuse the character in another shot, and now if you have to change their expression or something, you're trying to paint over an area that doesn't actually have a solid uniform color, right? You're painting over a gradient. That's come up at least a dozen times, let's say, in the last year. It comes up once in a while, right? So these are all things that I'm continually just, kind of being aware of, and say, what's the best approach to this? And then, as Valerie said in her infinite wisdom, that's probably why it's structured to be done as a post-production effect, not a, generally the methodology would be preferred to not bake it into your characters. This is one of those things that's probably like stupidly obvious. You guys are going, yeah, duh. I get it. Believe me, I get it. Alright, let's just go over here and see what we have here. Yeah, it was basically supposed to be some sort of, you know, it's like the shop owner, he's kind of poor. And so he's just got this stupid looking decorative, just, you know, sort of confetti-ish streamers sort of hanging around to just sort of dress up the exterior of his crappy little tent that he does his business out of, you know. Obviously, look at, I mean, come on. This is, you want to have a window in your tent? Well, the best way to make a window in the tent is to take your knife, go slice, and then rip the fabric. That's not funny. You're a little too self-aware there, Dave. We out here don't care. We just want to see something cool happen, right? Just do something cool. I'm with you, folks. I just want to do something cool. I'll give a little bit of almost a sense of a shadow there. And then let's go here and actually kind of, whoops. B key, you silly boy. So today's the day that everyone's saying, man, Dave, what are you like, you must be like bipolar, right? Because yesterday you're just like ranting about the software, and today you seem to be Mr. Cheerful. Everything's cool. So just to be accurate, I'm not bipolar. It's just that sometimes when the software disappoints me to a sufficient degree, I just get a little snarky. Little snarky there, folks. I'd say it can't be helped, but obviously it can be helped. Okay, let's look at what we have here. And I say we kind of sort of dive right in with Mel, but there is one little caveat. And the caveat is that this whole thing needs to be scaled. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say, for my purposes going forward, we are definitely going to want to have all of these layers parented to one another. So I'm going to grab this layer and let me see here. Okay. You know, speak of the devil, I would call that a bug. What we just saw was that when I opened the schematic, the layer or the level that was selected was not selected and highlighted yellow here the way it normally is. I had to actually click from one layer to another to get it to wake up and realize that, well, you guys get what I'm trying to say. So what I'm doing is I'm taking each of these layers and I'm parenting them to the sketch. And the reason I'm doing that, and by the way, I can still take the sketch and put it on top if I want and drag it over here. That doesn't have anything to do with the ordering of things. So it doesn't look like it quite did what I was after here. So slightly dangerous. Yeah, we're gonna have to do this. I was trying to avoid having to manually like modify the size of every one of these layers, but it looks like that's pretty much what I'm going to have to do. So if we're going to do that, let us change our strategy just a bit here. Actually, I'm going to leave this on top because that's my guide. I'm going to go ahead and do this one. So what does do this one mean? It means that this layer is going to be the parent. It's the background, so we'll make that the background, and then we'll parent any and all other layers of the background to it. And the only reason to do that is just so that the sizing gets inherited. So now on frame 1, I can go ahead and size down the background, make it fit, and that's kind of sort of where we want it to be. Now this should actually be like that. Yes and no. strike that. That's not supposed to be like that. This is actually the scale. Yeah, I mean, really, that's the scale that the characters need to be at. So let's just go ahead and kind of get this sort of in position. Yeah, it looks like I kind of botched it, because for some of it the scale is right and for some of it the scale is wrong. Not a big shock, since it is just... I'm gonna say we better give it at least 10 seconds. This is a pretty long static shot. So 80 frames, 10 seconds. We're operating at, 8 frames a second. So there we go. All right, so this sketch, it turns out, is not really that useful. And frankly, as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, oop, let's just get rid of it entirely. It's not helping much. And we'll save all. Okay. So now what we need to do is figure out where we're going to stick Mel. Now, why is Tahoma feeling a little hesitant at the moment and appears to be, I guess just because when you do save all, it takes a bit of time to save all. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just hit the B key. I think that we want to probably favor a smart raster level for our character. And so the first thing I'm going to do is add a second color, make it red, and do my usual routine, which is to use the old My Paint pencil. It's what I prefer for doing pencil test type stuff. So the purpose here is to block it in. Yeah, this is going to be quite a lot of animation, actually. And I'm going to fiddle with the color and see if there's... Yeah, honestly, something like that is easier to see. So we'll just go with that. Alright, so Mel's going to... Okay, little issue here. No, actually, that's not an issue. Okay. So yeah, he's cropped to the edge of the frame. It's just the background. If we cropped it to the camera, we would see that that's really what we're working with here. So okay, so there's Mel. And again, so there's probably a way to do it through the schematic. Let's think about this for a minute, since I'm thinking creatively. First of all, if we turn this off, that's kind of interesting. So we're in the stage schematic, and we're not in proper preview mode, but when we turn this off here or here, the bricks... Okay, I'm gonna have to check something here. Okay, so let's turn both of these off and see what we have here. Okay, this again is the wrong drawing. It's really, really a little confusing here, folks, because I thought I confirmed that this was just the main tent, but yet over here, okay, so another bug, another software bug. So what you guys probably didn't even see it happen just now, but what just happened was when I had this selected, it was actually this image that was selected in the level strip, but then when I put my mouse over it, it jumped to this one. Yeah. So what I'm doing now is I'm switching to this one, and again, as you can see, the level strip, I wouldn't call it a bug if if it stayed selected over here, which says that internally we're treating the level strip and the X sheet as two completely different things, and if it's this image that has the focus over here, it is what it is. I don't care what you did in the X sheet. But the problem is, if that was the mentality, then why would it switch to the correct drawing when you put your mouse over it? Right? So, these are all fair and interesting questions. Okay, so the next step I'm going to take here real quick is I'm going to jump to, let's jump to timing, just so I can see the horizontal timeline. Okay. And so this does kind of make it a little easier. What I'm trying to do is just delete all these and then take this and extend. So one of the things I'm trying to do today is just get more comfortable with the horizontal timeline in Tahoma for what that's worth. Okay, so now if we turn this layer or level back on, that's more like what we were trying to achieve in the first place. Okay, groovy. All right, so hey you all, welcome back. Had some good ideas yesterday. Okay, so I dragged the pencil sketch here to this frame because we basically want to enter the shot, and presumably what's probably going to happen on this shot, it's an establishing shot, right? It's the first shot in episode 2, literally. So it's going to come up from black, and probably the camera's going to be pushing in a little bit. So even this is too early. We're going to want, let's actually look at the edit. I'll try to remember here. Okay, so we're not even into the shot until 2 seconds. Pushing 3. The reality is we're going to enter the shot, and then, boop, then Mel pops in. So for my purposes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Mel at 3 seconds, because if we have to crop off the first piece of it like this in order to make it time out right, that's fine. The thing is, if Mel comes in a little late, that's okay. If he comes in early, we're going to have to wind up retiming everything. So cache read error, maybe. Not sure what your cache read error comment is in regard to, unless it's something with the live stream. The live stream right now, let me just show you this so you understand what's going on. The way I have OBS set up is it has what's called a stream delay. So what that means is what you're hearing me say at this very moment, you're hearing it about 15 seconds after I actually said it. And what happens is, every once in a while, I think because of my local internet connection, every once in a while it loses its connection. Okay. Typically the loss takes about 5 seconds to reconnect or so. And then what happens is, sometimes quicker than that. Well, what OBS does is it then continues streaming from when it continues literally from where it left off. So in other words, you don't miss anything. What happens is it just keeps going from where it left off. It's just that the screen freezes for 5 seconds or whatever it is. And so this delay right here, which right now is 15 seconds, over the course of a 2-hour or whatever live stream, that delay gets longer and longer and longer. So by the time I'm finished, there might be a 30-second delay between what I'm doing and what you're seeing. So the good news about that is that if things freeze up on the live stream, you don't actually miss anything. That's the good side. The trade-off is that you increasingly have this delay between what I'm doing and what you're seeing. So I'm assuming that's what you're alluding to, something about that. So anyway, Mel is going to therefore come in on frame 25. Why? Well, because 3 seconds at 8 frames a second, obviously, is 24 frames. So what we're going to do here is we're going to just block in the key drawings. All right. So the question is, how long is Mel going to pop out there? Boop. 1 second, I would say. So let's just do 8 frames. And then I'm going to say, let's see here, we've got this. I'm going to say over 3 frames, I'm just going to draw where his head would be. Head, head, gone. Okay. And then I'm going to wait another second. And then, unfortunately, what's probably going to happen now, I don't remember. I might have my preferences set so this doesn't happen, but what's probably going to happen is Tahoma's going to fill this in. I don't actually want it to. Nope, it didn't. Okay, so I got the preferences set correctly. That means that Darren steered me in the right direction as far as my preferences go. So thank you for that, Darren. Okay, so now that tells us this column actually needs to be here. Okay, so that he's behind this building. Now, you say, well, yeah, but the problem is now he's still behind it. Exactly. So now we're doing what I sort of described earlier in the video, which is we're going to take this one level that has all kinds of the entire sequence in it, but the frames of it are going to be distributed throughout the X sheet, so that we can put the character both in front of and behind. Okay, so this is actually working pretty well. So you can see what I'm trying to do. 2 seconds and then bloop. See? So it's cool. It's going to be fun. All right, so he pops out again. And now what we want to do is just all we're doing now is blocking in the timing. That's all we're trying to do is figure out the timing. Boom. Okay, so here I'm just going to add one tween, and he's going to disappear again. And then here, same situation. Now we need to insert a column here, and this needs to be here. Okay. So again, now I will say this: we don't want to belabor the sort of the snappy, gaggy nature of this. We don't want to belabor it and insult our audience. So for that reason, typically what I would think is, once you've established this sort of motion dynamic that's going on here that you guys all understand, now what we want to do is speed it up. We don't want to wait as long. And so again, increasingly as we go through here, these little boop, those little boops should be, you know, let's get it moving, you know, let's get moving. Okay, we get the joke, Dave. Keep going, you know, don't be wasting our time. Hope that makes sense. All right, so I'm on my other Tahoma is saving. On my other screen, I'm moving my output settings because it. Okay, so is Mel sometimes aware of the fourth wall? That's a great question. In this show, the answer would be no. It's not that I wouldn't do it, but at no point have I done it where there's been an instance of a character speaking to the audience, as it were. That has not happened. It's not, you know, I would do it if it was appropriate to the situation, for sure. Okay, so now we don't really need a tween here. Okay, so now you can see what the problem is. We're back to the same situation. This actually needs to be here. Okay, and I'm going to erase that and redraw it because the scale is a little bit wrong. Okay. Now, think about this for half a second. I think that what we should do is keep it snappy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give him a half second, and then I'm going to actually hit the D key, and then just move this. So what I'm debating is the fact that this is the point where potentially using some animation tools could be quite useful. If let me think about this. If he had a bone, if he, not necessarily a bone rig, but the thing about it is, any way you slice it, he's going to have different drawings for the positions of his feet and stuff. Good morning, Maria. So I would say we're going to do this. We're going to do this the old school way, which is to just insert a bunch of drawings. We're just going to do it the old school way. So I'm going to add one onion skin behind so I can see where the last shot was. And then what we're going to do is if you notice, what I'm doing is I'm having his head kind of go back and forward. The idea here is that when he passes in front of this tent, it's almost like he's whistling, you know, trying to be Mr. Innocent or whatever. My suspicion, by the way, is that the timing of this is probably way too fast. Don't know. And another thing, by the way, in terms of what I was saying a moment ago about rigging, possibly using animation tools, even if I don't use animation tools, what I can do is once I've drawn his head the first time, in fact, truthfully, probably the first head I draw over here will wind up getting reused, and I can just cut and paste it from one drawing into it to the next and resize it as needed. So okay, this I'm given a little bit of a, I'm just thinking that what I'm wanting to do here is I'm going to do I'm going to do a little bit of a Jerry Lewis thing here, I think. I'm not a big Jerry Lewis fan, only because I don't particularly like the man. He was a nasty son of a bitch, actually, if the truth be known. Jerry Lewis was a mean, nasty guy. But in his time as a comedian, he was, you know, pretty popular, and he did sort of he did some things very well, you know, he really did. I'm not a big fan of the guy. As if anyone really cares, you know, right? I'm just adding some frames here so we can give ourselves some time. But what I want to do here is have Mel turn around and give this guy his big grin that he does. And he's got his hands behind his back. I'm going to turn this onion skin back off. So you get the idea that he's just Mr. Innocent. And this will last for not very long. And then I'm just going to really be quick about this in terms of what I'm trying to do. Double check our time. Yeah, that works. Okay, and now I'm going to go and have him disappear again. Okay, so now what we're going to discover is that the timing of all this stuff, this whole thing, is way, way, way too fast. I'm sure of it. So let's find out. Loop. Loop. Not bad, not bad. Actually, probably okay. I'm thinking this is going to turn into quite a mess of layers, that's for sure. How would we do this? Let me see. If I hit the B key, and we'll call this merchant, just for lack of a better idea. I'm going to make this red, and just the idea is that he's popping out here. And the only way that works is he pops in, disappears, and then about here He's a fat little guy. Boy, let's turn the smoothing off. Whoops. Hit the wrong hotkey. I could totally see jump into a close-up as well, by the way. And is this shopkeeper male or female? It appears to me that at this moment, that is an open question. Okay, so this... So let's go back here and just kind of see how things are feeling. Okay. This shopkeeper thing is something that wasn't originally really part of the concept. I sort of had the idea floating around in there somewhere, but I hadn't really thought about how it might work. I don't like this pose. I think this is wrong. This should be... let's just erase all this. And I'm thinking that what should actually happen is... Hello? S key? Yeah. I'm going to make this slightly bigger. And obviously we can always change the timing, but the idea is peak. Yeah, so what is this drawing? I'm going to just get rid of that. I'm going to get rid of that one. Control X. So it would not be the worst idea ever, which should be a completely different drawing, but it would be probably not a bad idea to insert a close-up of the merchant looking at Mel somewhat askew, shall we say? Yule, yeah, the Mister not doing anything. I'm seeing a few foot taps at the stop there to whistle. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Foot taps wouldn't be a horrible thing. Let's just put in the so right here. Oh yeah, sorry. Here. I'm just gonna put in the indication of it, but yeah, that's definitely a good idea. So I'll just put just an indication there. So yeah, we could definitely see a close-up of the shopkeeper, but I'm not going to bother with that now. Because this is such a big shot, let's just get the wide shot working. Because probably what's going to happen is after you cut to the close-up of the shopkeeper, what's going to happen is, if you were going to do a close-up, what the close-up would be, the shopkeeper would be going like, and then you'd see them in the close-up, you'd see them zap back out of the frame, and so then when we cut back to the wide shot, they just wouldn't be there, right? I mean, that would be the kind of usual way to do it. It's been done before. It's a little trite to a degree, but at the same time, it's kind of the appropriate thing to this particular shot. So anyway, so then we get here. Let me double check our timing here. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So then, and when it cuts back, before Mel leaves, the shopkeeper would be gone. So therefore, we delete those. At the point that Mel starts moving, we've got one frame without the shopkeeper, and then bloop, he disappears. Now we're back here. And actually, we're not back here. We're back here, aren't we? I believe we are. So this is going to be pretty brisk. Boom. And again, we don't want to waste the audience's time. At this point, we need to get things moving here. So boom, little peak, only half a second. Doo-doo. Doo-doo. And then he disappears. He actually, and then what we'll do, I think we're done. And then we're going to cut to a close-up with the brick wall with Mel peering around it, and then we have all the interaction with Luca and Monkey that happens, because Luca and Monkey are actually chillaxing here in this dark alley. That's what Luca does. He's an orphan. He lives on the street. Yada yada yada. So it looks like we basically got our shot blocked in. Not bad. File, save all. I like your creative input, by the way, Ewell Adamus. I like it. I can tell you think you're not thinking. It's clear that you think like a director. You're thinking about what matters, which is the story, the action, the movement, the timing. You know, how is this action going to make me feel, which is great. That's really what you want to be thinking about. All the animation tools are just a necessary evil to accomplish the storytelling, right? Okay, so let's get with it here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, it would be irresponsible of me to not at least consider the possibility of stealing a shot of Mel from another shot. But for the moment, we'll stick with the current plan as it is. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to take this and move it out here in an unrealistic location and draw him there so that we have a complete full head. Then we'll put that head in a couple of these other shots, shrunk down to the appropriate size, blah, 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 and then we'll come back to this frame and move the head back into position. So, and that's all so that the head as drawn doesn't actually get cut off, right? So, and if you're gonna draw the head, draw it at the largest size we're gonna see it, right? That probably goes without saying. Hitting the B key, and because it has been my preference recently to try to work at actual size and not zoom in too much unless it's strictly necessary, I'm going to try to do that. But that presents a little bit of an issue that we were alluding to earlier with the schematic, and that's interesting. Okay, it's because it was saving. This is a weird coincidence that I always seem to try to open the schematic right after I've hit Control S. So, okay, so what are we doing here? Okay, that's interesting. As far as the stage schematic's concerned, that one level is in fact 4 different levels. Okay, this makes sense. So now I want to come, what I was exploring earlier was I was asking myself why when I turn off, okay, now it's working. So that was not working earlier. Okay, but as you can see, the visibility of those guys is not inherited. So what I'm going to do, let me think about this. I really got to think about this for a second. I think we should just turn down the layer opacity. I'm trying to think if there's a good way to dynamically turn down the layer opacity of multiple layers at once, which is kind of a kludgy way to get to the idea of being able to solo the layers that are left. There really isn't, though, because if we do something in the effects schematic to be able to throttle down the visibility of the layers, that's only going to be seen when we're in render mode like this. And it should be the case that even by turning those down when we render, we get, you know, full color, baby. So, cool. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just turn these guys down, and we'll live with it that way. That didn't work. Ooh, didn't mean to do that. I guess when I hit the erase key, I need to be in selective mode. So it only selects my active color. Okay, that worked. As usual, people, I'm working from the known to the unknown. Meaning there's stuff that's very clear in my mind, and I'm drawing that first. And normally that helps the things that aren't clear to kind of magically appear. That I didn't like. That's better. He does have a line there, and we need to see. A lot of the corrections I've done in the last couple days involve this stupid little bit of hair behind his. You know, his hair goes down to here, and I've got a bunch of shots that I did earlier in the show that where his hairline actually stopped at the headband. So now, because of the nature of the shot, no, too much of a good thing there, folks. I think I'm going to have to acquiesce and go ahead and zoom in so I can see what I'm doing better. So, per Yule's suggestion, I'm actually going to have Mel look straight out. So, I'm shameless. I'm going to steal as many ideas from Yule Adamus as I can, because obviously Yule Adamus is has a good mind for animated storytelling. And I don't like this. Not bad, not bad, not bad. Okay, so now on this particular frame, I'm going to hit the E key and just erase all the stuff that is not helping. Okay. Also, while I'm here, while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to go ahead and get that line density dialed in. Let's do a flesh tone. Let's do a headband. Let's do hair. Let's do a whites of the eyes. Okay. Can we do this? Think about this for a minute. And by the way, I'm going to flip my canvas and just double. Yeah, that's fine. I'm thinking, let's just go ahead and put in these border areas with the pertinent colors. And let's say his garment in this particular sequence is blue-ish, so I'm just going to go ahead and put in a blue color just so I've got something to create a border with. And then I think what we'll do is we'll just kind of go like that for this drawing and leave it as yeah. Boom. Purple probably needs to come across there. Fill tool. And just a little bit of flesh tone there. Okay, cool. Now, what about okay. I am going to do a bit with this. I'm going to create a duplicate. This is going to turn into quite a mess of drawings, by the way. I don't actually want that in there. I'm just going to delete that out. Hit the erase key here. Ooh, I don't want to be selective mode anymore. Okay. And so, for now, just going to delete those out of there so they're not confusing things. B key. This is only going to be on the screen for one frame. Boom. Boom. And now it's duplicate, E key, one of the rules with Tahoma is that it's usually easier and cleaner to just completely erase a section than to try to like paint over it. In this case, do I want any whites of the eyes there? I think not, but I'll put in a little bit. Yeah, I guess it's okay with it in. That actually looks good. Okay, so now here's where the ripple editing in Tahoma bites you in the rumpurilius. Basically, the solution here is that if you're going to be working out timing and whatnot, you pretty much need to have a utility layer that you're dragging to and from. So meaning what? Meaning that I'm going to put this over here and say, well, this is going to be on the screen for half a second. So if I drag it here, it's going to move everything else down, which is not what I want. I'm going to hit the D key and basically reverse this situation. So I'm going to go ahead and, as I said, just erase, erase, B key. Okay, right there is exactly what I was talking about. There you go. It doesn't know how to deal with the smart raster levels are pretty cool because they're procedural, but it does not know how to deal with changes to something that's already been painted. So you're just 9 times out of 10 you're way better off to just go like this and just repaint. Just get rid of it. This is my experience over a pretty long period of time with OpenToonz and Tahoma. Okay, so now I should be able to hit the fill tool and actually, oops, okay. I better save my work. Darren gave me some warnings the other day about the occasional smart raster levels getting corrupted, and I definitely don't want that. So I don't know that I've ever had a smart raster level get corrupted. And again, we're going to move this over here. Yeah, not bad. let's zoom out and kind of see what we have. Okay, so yeah, pick what you know and search for the rest of the details. That's how I do it. Cool. Yeah, yesterday, Yule, I was asking what your like what software you use or how do you do animation? And you never answered. I looked at your YouTube channel. You don't have any videos, so I assume that you're either kind of new to it or, I don't know. But yeah, definitely curious. Okay, so that's that. Not matter much. They really don't, because they're going to go by really, really fast. And what I'm doing is kind of what I said before and what Yule mentioned is the idea that I'm just finding my drawing by focusing on the stuff I know for sure where it goes. Tell you what I want to do. Well, I'll keep going here. Oh yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to check his costuming. It's kind of important, actually. I'm going to jump to the edit. So, your workflow and understanding of the tools is great. Thanks. Well, you have to be kind of organized when you got 40 minutes of show. It's you gotta be a little careful. Okay, so he's basically got a waistband. I'm just gonna leave one of these shots up from the latter part of the show because once this whole situation happens, he's in the same costuming all through the whole rest of the show. So, actually, I think the question I'm asking myself is, what about the guy's pants? Didn't we have a wide shot here somewhere? What about Mel's pants? No, we don't. We do not have a shot of Melchizedek's pants. Well, I'm going to, yeah, I mean, you can see he's got this gap in his belt, so I'm going to, or below his belt. I'm pretty much thinking he's in lengthy trousers. And I'm pretty sure that's right because in the earlier part of the show, he was essentially in his shorts. So what we have is there is basically a kind of a hangover here. Hangover. That's funny. So this is super foreshortened. That looks stupid, obviously. What do we have here? What's really going on here is I have to draw it and then erase it. What's happening is we've got this foreshortened leg and it's basically going this way, really sticking out, and then the other leg we really don't see it, so I'm gonna say we can pretty much take that and that. That's pretty much what we're gonna have. So yeah, that looks really stupid, but I'm not gonna belabor it because it's only gonna be on the screen for one frame. Why are we gonna like knock ourselves out to get amazing anatomy for a shot that's no one's gonna see? Let's just be a little bit pragmatic here. And same with his arm. I mean, his arm's basically wrapping around the front of him. Let's just get on to the next shot. And that's actually his foot sticking out there. Alright, let's just see how it flows. You know, it might be kind of working. Obviously, his head's in the wrong position for that shot. That's fine. But what I am going to do now that I'm actually thinking about it is I'm going to grab this, Control C, and now I'm going to go here, and I'm going to hit Control V, and then immediately shrink that baby down, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Now, I don't think eye blinks and that sort of business is going to help here. However, are we not kind of in the same situation back here? Yeah, here. So now we're going to go S key, Control V, and we're going to just flip it over. And once again, shrink it down like that. Okay, so now we got to make sure. Yeah, our scale actually looks about right. Cool. Nice. Nice. And then probably with a slight modification of his expression, probably this. So what we want to do is we want to modify this. This is going to be tricky, by the way. If we hit the N key, we're going to have to zoom way in, and you can see it's pretty pixelated, which that's fine. The audience isn't going to see that. But I'm going to say, you know what I'm going to do? Oh yeah, that's the shopkeeper. So you know what I'm going to do? This is going to be fun, actually. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to reuse it. But what I think I'm going to do here is actually flip it again. Come on. Minus. So that when he's tinkling forward, he's going to be looking back. And then for this one, and we can always go in and modify these faces, obviously, but I think for the most part, we're going to be wanting to do it this way. This one's highly questionable because, you know, I mean, seriously, in this pose his body is pointing that way but his head's looking that way, so it's going to be awkward. But remember, a little bit of a change, and then obviously that will work. Well, I say obviously, yeah, till it doesn't, right? But yeah, that will require quite a change in expression. But the basic orientation is about right, so. For that one, we'll just redraw the back of his head. And here, yep, by gum, it's the same situation again. And it needs to be shrunk even more. So as you can see, and a lot of extra animation isn't going to help it. You know, this is entertaining, but you know, it's got a bit of a shelf life. Okay, so file, save all. We'll give Tahoma a minute to. How do you make animations like it was hand drawn on paper first, like anime artists do? Well, I have two answers to that. Number one, three answers. Number one, by doing it on paper. which I don't animate on paper and then scan and clean it up. I don't do that. But what I do, and I showed yesterday in the live stream, is I take and I block out on paper what all the key poses are going to be, and then the timing of the way different things are going to move and how they're going to get from here to there, that type of thing. And so I'll wind up with one sheet of, like in a notepad. And I was mentioning yesterday that every time I've done that, I don't do it all the time, but every time I've done it, the shots tend to come out better. They tend to come out closer to what I originally had in mind. So working things out on paper is definitely a useful thing. So that's number one. Number two is I've experimented with this a fair amount. The if we actually go back over here to the show, some of the earlier, well, actually, honestly, some of the more recent shots have that kind of a look, like scanned pencil art, and that's partly the use of a pen or a brush that has a little bit of noise in it, like a pencil script, like graphite on paper, So you can create ink lines that are very much like that. That's not hard to do, and it's way easier than scanning pencil art and trying to clean it up. Because I've tried it, and in my experience, there really is no scenario where cleaned up traditional anime style pencil lines, as opposed to drawing it digitally with something that looks more like a pencil, there's no scenario where that's a win. It's always a loss. The quality it's really hard to get the quality, and frankly, you know what, the most recent animes I've seen, they tend to have fairly clean ink lines anyway. They don't really now one of the creators that I like, which would be the group that kind of Yo-Yo Shinari is associated with. So that would be the group that went from being Gainax to Trigger, and they created Kill la Kill, and they created Little Witch Academia. Those guys tend to do it the old school way. They're, if you look at the documentary stuff on Little Witch Academia, all the key art is done on paper. And if you do it on paper at full size, and scan it, you might get great results. You might. My experience is it's almost always it's not a win, not for me. Because I've tried it different ways. So the closest I've been able to come to it would be something like this, where you're saying, well, instead of having this really clean line on my character, and remember, by the way, in anime, a lot of times what they do, if you put this in pencil mode, there's no anti-aliasing, so if you zoom in close, you can see it's really not pixelated, but stair-steppy. A lot of anime is actually done that way. So if I just do a quick and dirty drawing of Mel here with, in pencil mode, what happens is you then, and by the way, this is anatomically a little bit challenged because frankly this is not really quite right. His chin isn't quite that long. That's better. Okay, so anyway, but then you can take your level, and if you go into the level settings, you can add anti-aliasing, so that actually will create a blur effect, if you will. It'll do anti-aliasing on the level, so that when it renders, you get the nice soft lines. And that's actually more indicative of the anime look for most anime, I would say, than actually having scanned pencil art. But the other option that's available to you is you just use a brush that kind of sort of looks like a pencil. And this probably wants to be at about a size -1. But if you do that, you can do it that way. You can go ahead and just sketch the thing as pencil art and leave it that way. If that's the style of the show that you're trying to create and it works, then you do that. Early in the process, that's exactly what I was doing. And all in all, I just didn't really think the results I was getting looked quite like what I was looking for. It just had a little bit too much of a rough look to it. And to be fair, the look of this show has been a little bit all over the map over the last many months, where I've been sort of figuring out what I want the look to be. So anyway, hopefully that helps, kind of answer your question. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just go back and rewatch this, because now that it's kind of blocked in there, we're going to see if our timing is kind of sort of what it's supposed to be. Okay, not bad actually. Boop. I'm feeling like probably there should be a slightly greater hesitation point there. So I'm just going to hit Alt down arrow and add quite literally a half a second of boop. Ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. All in all, it's probably pretty good, because, again, this needs to go by pretty quick. Otherwise, you're sort of like, at least for me, it's like, what I said earlier. We get the joke, let's get on with the story, what happens next kind of thing. I really like the pencil brushes and the hand-drawn effects they give. And Maria, I agree with you. In practice, I do find that over the long haul of a project of this nature, it's a little hard to control, and I guess I'll leave it at that. I wouldn't discourage anyone from going that direction. I think it's a good look. It's pretty cool, but for me, I've sort of abandoned trying so hard to have a pencil look to the show. Okay, so here... Okay, I see what I need to do. Actually, what I'm going to do here... Let me double check and see if there's anything here on column 7. There isn't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two tweens and just push them into column 7. And I am going to use the animate tool here, because all of these keys need to be moved. And frankly, you're not going to move them manually and have every single move be exactly the same. So now if you love that idea and you want the randomness of it, that's what you're trying to do, then fine. But basically what we want to do here is this. It just makes the whole job a lot easier to just go like that. So that's that. Okay. Now, quick tweens. These are quick tweens. We are going to block these babies in really fast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the V key, which is the, what do they call it in Tahoma? It keeps changing the names of things. The Smart Raster Paint tool. What it basically does is lets you hand paint in areas. Okay? And I'm just doing it this way because it's kind of quick, it's kind of intuitive. And a lot of the details of these particular drawings just don't matter much because they're going by so freaking fast. So this is a little bit of a thing. We need to make a double color here. And because as I recall, I need to go back and look at probably jump back here and look at his costume. But yeah, most of it's dark blue, and then he's got a really dark blue sash. So, okay, so basically this is the outfit. The exact colors for this shot, I mean, obviously we're out in the middle of the day. I don't think we need to belabor that these colors exactly match a color key, okay? Sometimes that's important. A lot of times it's important. For this, it's probably not very important. Now, that worked. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is add another color and make it even darker. And there's the... shoot. So the V key, the paint... This tool does not... it's actually a little strange to explain. It doesn't quite respect the borders, the edges, the way the regular brush does. I'll leave it at that because it's kind of there's some nuance to it that's probably not worth getting into. Okay, yeah, another issue here is we really need to put his armband on him. This should fill okay. Okay, stop everything. I need to grab this color, hit the E key in selective mode, and get rid of our pencil lines. Probably should do that here too. Okay, back to the V key. Now it'll fill probably quite nicely, right? So now we're going to take this. This is going to be whatever's the darkest color we can find. Didn't mean to do that. We probably should get these guys blocked in. Again, I'm not being particularly picky about the colors because this is a really, really fast tween. And I'm just going to actually put a little shape there to represent his leg because he's moving really, really fast. Okay, so this is going to be that color. This is going to be the trim up here. Fill tool. Come on, fill tool. Help me out here, baby. Okay, little bit of flesh tone there. And just if it goes outside of the lines, it doesn't matter. Okay, that's it. That's all we need there. At least that's what I'm thinking. Let me see what happens when it plays back. Nope. Okay, we do have a problem. We got two problems actually. First of all, this one I would say is a little too big. I'm thinking there. This one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some manual, essentially motion blur, if you will. So I'm going to hit the V key. Put that in there. Just put in a mark here for his little wrist wraps. And by the way, to be perfectly candid, I'm not 100% sure this is going to work. Because it could be that we really need one tween here. It definitely doesn't look right. If the background was all opaque and it was, the way it's really going to be, would it be working? Maybe. But probably at 8 frames a second, what's likely here is that turning this off so there's only one tween is probably what we want to do. But this is one of those cases where you guys are going, really, dude? Really? You're doing all this stuff and you don't know how that should... Yeah, that's actually more like it. I'm going to delete this column and just put one tween in there. And again, ultimately what's probably going to be needed is... See, in Krita this would be easier. You just blur it. But it's like a motion blur kind of thing. So, but that's okay. We're getting there, folks. We're getting there. Okay, so now we've got this. And I am going to hit the D key. And now the V key. And I'm going to turn this to lines and areas so that I can just erase over everything. Cover up everything. B key. That's really, really bold. I'm actually going to redo those with the pencil thing off. It's generally trying to get I'm making it really bold because he's so small in the frame. But the idea is, yeah, see, look at that. That eye blink actually is really cool. Boom. Yeah, I think that works. Boom, bop. Okay. Yeah, I mean, whether these tweens, whether they help at all is debatable, actually. If this tween, I'm not even going to put it in there for the moment. I'm going to leave it out, because if he just disappeared and then reappeared over here, it would work really fine, you know. Okay, so yes, that's what I thought. Okay, so this head is just simply too big. Yeah, that's better. This head obviously is still too big because, unfortunately, but the solution there is going to be to resize the column. Again, the animate tool. Just because if we're going to have this stuff all in separate layers anyway, we might as well use the layers to our advantage. Okay, so this one, same situation as before. We want to be erasing in selective mode because that's still got the pencil in it. So probably all of these do. Yep. That one, like I said, I'm just going to leave that for the moment. I don't know if it's going to turn out to be necessary. Okay, so, wow, Maria's got a bunch of comments here. For this project, the cleaner style is much better. I mean, a few months ago, I watched the Ghibli the Ghibli, I should say. That movie actually used several styles of art depending on the mood and the action. Do you have any advice on running cycles from different perspectives? Yeah, I've got some really good advice for you on running cycles. I'll come back to that in a moment after I go through these chats. I'm new in self-teaching for animation, right? They're very nice guides for walking and running cycles. I download and practice on them. That's probably the best way. And join the Discord. Okay. Okay, so the anime way, and I'm going to tell you this. I think that anybody who, like, if you get Richard Williams' book, you're going to see, I mean, that's the seminal tome about animation is Richard Williams, the Animator's Survival Kit. Half the book is given to walk cycles, you know, and the timing associated with it. So, totally recommend that book. However, okay, I'm gonna put on my boss hat now. Okay, I'm gonna put on I'm the guy who has written and directed and producing the whole cartoon. And I've done 36 minutes so far of animation on this thing. I'm going to give you some really good practical advice. The question you have to ask yourself, if you want to learn animation, you want to learn timing, then yes, do walk cycles, do run cycles. You don't need any advice from me about that, because you're going to, if you just look on YouTube or Google it, you're going to find 100 billion different examples of walk cycles and run cycles, so you can learn it just by, like Maria said, just copy it. However, my advice is, rather than belaboring that, because we've all seen Disney movies going back multiple decades, we all know what a walk cycle and a run cycle looks like. Bugs Bunny cartoons, whatever. We all know what they look like. So we're not getting any new information or entertainment inherently out of the fact that you are able to animate a walk cycle or a run cycle. So if it's appropriate to your storytelling, great. But my advice is, rather than do the run cycle, ask yourself really, really seriously whether your project needs the run cycle. Because it's one of the most difficult things to animate well. You know, to animate well. You can do it, but so if you were of the anime persuasion, you would do it this way. I'll show you what you do if you were of the anime persuasion. I'll show you how to do a run cycle. I'm gonna see if I can show you how to do a run cycle in my work too. So, okay, run cycle in no time at all. Here's how you do it. I'm not gonna deal with ink and paint, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw a character like this, and he's an anime type character. Okay. So he's scared. He's running from a bear, okay, or something of that nature. All right, so now you're going to have probably some animation on his hair, okay? Okay, there's drawing number 1. And I hit the D key. Here's drawing number 2. I'm going to grab this. And I'm going to rotate it like that, move that to there, and we're going to loop these. Control C, V, 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 V. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my animate tool, and I'm going to go like this, and I'll jump forward a couple frames. I'm not going to be super careful about this. It can be somewhat random, doesn't have to be. Okay, and now the piece de resistance, which is I'm going to take this drawing, drag it in here. This is a stupid drawing to use for this, by the way, since it's obviously not a like outdoor background type situation. But for the purpose of an example, it's not like the worst thing ever, which is that I'm going to hit the animate tool. I'm going to go like this, and then over the course of this period of time, I'm going to pan the background. All right, and now just so it's easy to see, I'll turn the background kind of back down, and we'll go from here to here, and there you go. This is the anime way. Why do you see this in anime all the time? Because it's cheap, it's fast, and importantly, it does just as good a job of telling the story as to do a complicated walk cycle where you're concerning yourself a lot with the anatomy of the person and their weight, all those things. 9 times out of 10 in an anime, if I see somebody running or walking, this is what I'm going to see. I'm going to see a little bit of motion and a panned background. It's cheap, it's fast, it's effective. If it was not as effective, you'd say, well, maybe not. Because you know, you're just cheating. But the problem is, it actually usually is just as effective, if not more so. In other words, I would argue that a well-done run cycle done this way is better than a poorly executed but impressive and lots of work run cycle done the traditional way. But you take your pick. You know, you do it however you want to do it. But my advice is, if you can get away with not doing the run cycle, that's the best run cycle. But that's me, you know, coming from the vantage point of somebody that has done over 800 shots on this show. You know, when you're dealing with 800 shots, which is going to turn into closer to 1,600, you tend to get real practical about what does the most effective and economical storytelling. So hope you guys appreciate that. But, you know, it's really, that's my absolute strong advice, is to be, in other words, be a thinking animator, not just a, it's good to have the skills, though, to be able to do a run cycle and whatnot. Of course, it's good to practice that, and you know, of course, you want to learn that. There's nothing wrong with that. But in practice, not always necessary. Okay, so now Tahoma's really having to think, like it's only able to do 2 frames per second. So this is fairly informative to me, as I'm sitting here going, well, okay, how much did we have to get into our scene before? For that cheap and fun run cycle, cheat early and often. Yeah, also in anime, the floating and arms, repeating legs. Yeah, I mean, just loop the stuff. It looks good, it feels good, it works. So anyway, there's that. Boop, boop. How are we doing on time today? Yeah, almost 3 hours. Well, 2.5. Not surprising considering the scope of this shot. This is a big shot. Okay, so now what we need to do is get down to the business of, well, the very thing I just told you to avoid, which is a walk cycle. Oh, the irony. The irony that the minute he gets done telling you not to do a walk cycle, the very next thing I need to animate is a walk cycle. It's like one of the very few in the show that I've done. So now you're going to find out why I don't do walk cycles if I can avoid it, because you're going to find out how bad they are. No, it's not going to be that bad. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start modifying this. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit, but I'm going to start modifying this a bit here and there. As I've mentioned before, probably the best course of action here is to just fill those like that, or erase them I should say. And then I think we're going to fall back on this concept because, I mean, he's so wide in the shot. I mean, this is actual size. This is what the viewer's going to see on the screen. So I'm just thinking we want to go cartoony on this thing. Otherwise, you're not even going to be able to see the details anyway. Oops. My bad. I was on the wrong frame. Nope. Okay. Alright, I'm going to hit the old erase selective thing. Get rid. Undo. Apparently it wasn't in selective mode. Okay. B key. Alright. Now, what I'm doing here is risky behavior. Why? Because I am basically diving right in and drawing straight without any pencil test or guide. Definitely risky behavior. But for a shot like this, that's this wide, it might be okay. And we're going to find out. I'm less concerned about the walk cycle at this moment than I am about his body language. He's very much sneaking. I'm not going to bother with outlines because, again, you're not going to see them. This is what I was talking about earlier. What it's looking for is a border edge done by this tool. So if there's a border created by this tool like that, then it'll fill properly. So it's a little persnickety compared to the regular brush. Okay. And so I'm just using this because it makes it easier to just fill in these broad swaths of color. The only problem is you have to kind of go up and change the size every once in a while. Okay, let's get out here. And what we're going to do is we're going to keep this real sketchy. real cartoony. And there's, so that should, oh, it didn't, it won't film. V key, that's too bad. That's too bad, people. Oh, wrong color there, Jack. We're gonna definitely have to accommodate some sort of shadow action. Yeah, so I'm going to look at the comments here real quick. You can learn to play with the acceleration curve of the background or parallax light. Well, yeah, I mean, when I did the example, the pacing of it was all completely wrong. Not just a walk cycle, but a sneaky. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm doing here. This is a sneaky, funny walk cycle. Exactly. Okay, so will this fill? Ah, that will fill. That will fill. That will fill. Okay, so I got my little borders in there. So right now, this will not fill unless I actually put a line across the top. Again, bit strange. See? Without that line across the top making a border that was created by this tool, it doesn't work. Okay, and now we probably need to take our brush and we can just kind of start putting in a little bit of detail. Like so. Okay. Here his left leg's in front. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, we don't really have a way. I'm doing it. I'm gonna be Mr. Cheater to a large degree here, and just to this, to kind of sort of make it work, I think. Boom. Okay, now the question is, that leg should not be in front, it should be behind, I believe. Actually, no. I think this is actually going to work. That's hilarious. And probably clip a little bit of that out too. Hello. Guess we don't want to be in selective mode for that. Okay. Hit the B key. Oops. I think that I hit the B key and Tahoma thought I was still on the V key. You guys are being pretty patient with me today. I gotta say, I mean, this is, I find shots like this really embarrassing because they look so stupid, but in my mind, I know when this plays back live and it's done, it's actually going to look really cool. So, but when you look at the components of it in isolation, it's like, it's kind of scary how stupid looking it is. How amateurish and all the rest. So, well, just hang in there, folks. Hang in there. I haven't failed you yet. Actually, that's not true. I've failed you plenty of times, but okay. So here, I can hit the, I believe it's a G key. Yeah, just checking my hotkeys, and that samples not the RGB value of the color, but actually the palette entry. So by hitting the G key, and that is not the default hotkey. So I don't even know what the default is for that. But that kind of sort of works now. So I hit the G key to sample that color so that I can just take the V key and fix that up. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so now the question becomes, can we leverage this entire shot back here? Let's find out. Why not? Let's try it. It would be helpful actually if I had a utility layer. I do this in Krita quite a lot. That puts a guide across the bottom of the screen. Let me do this. Let me go ahead and fix this first. Obviously, having two heads is generally bad practice for most human beings. So we will dispense with the two-headed monster kind of idea. And then what we probably want to do is come back here. And if we drag, not this, I'm sorry. If we grab a line here and go like this, we can actually put in a guideline here. That one looks like it's okay. And it looks like I got it pretty close actually. Okay, so let's just rewind and catch our breath here and see what we have so far. I think it's going to work. I actually think it's going to work. Okay. Here's what we have that's wrong. Okay, so fine. This is okay. This is okay. What we'll do is we'll take this one. Control C. Let's go to this one. Control V. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make a couple little changes to it. Number one, let's get rid of his head, and then we'll just patch the hole here shortly. Then number two, let's have him hunkered down a little bit more. So we'll put the center point right down here, and then have him hunkered over. Okay, now we grab this whole bit, bring it over here until it basically kind of sort of lines up. Look at that. That works. Okay, and now we can take the G key, sample that color, and then fill in all the little holes to just kind of sort of make it work. By the way, we do need to erase our sketch lines. So eraser in selective mode gets rid of the sketch lines, and now let's go to the next. I may come back and add some details, by the way, but for now I'm just going to keep reusing these poses. This one I'm going to definitely reuse now, and we're definitely not going to have the looking back thing. So I'm going to hit the S key and hit Control V and just use that to help figure out his positioning. I'm going to move it back a little bit here in half a second, but the first thing I'm going to do is just erase this head. This head doesn't need to be in there. Okay, so now we can select all this and just kind of move it back. If you hit the Shift key, it constrains it to whatever axis you start moving on. Yeah, Yule. I like Yule. I can tell that Yule understands what's going through my head. So, of course, I like everybody that, like most people. I like everyone who I think is kind of sort of like me. I think that's pretty normal. Okay. Let's see what we have here. Boop 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 boop. Okay, yeah, so what we need to do is we need to take, what we're going to do is we're going to take this, chop that sucker to the clipboard. We're going to hit the E key, actually, we're not even going to do a selective erase. We're just going to erase everything. Okay, S key, V, and then what we're going to do is we're going to stop here. This is going to be wrong. This needs to come down a little bit more. He needs 1/2 of 1 second. And then D key. We're going to put another one of those blatant eye blinks in there. So, like I say, we're getting away with murder here as far as the scale and resolution of it goes. But boom. All right. So now after that happens, obviously we gotta let that breathe. This is what I always tell actors when I'm dealing with them on a live action set. Slow down, dude. Let your performance breathe. Give the audience a half a sec to digest what you just did. Look at that. Look at that. That works. In fact, boom, 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 boom. I think, since I'm feeling frisky here, I think what I'm going to do is, let me look at what this is, where these, okay, that doesn't matter. Okay, so cool. So what I'm going to do is, I am going to get rid of these intermediate keys. The important thing is this moment when he freezes and then blinks. And the shot motor pop. See, now it's funny. Now it's getting funny. We're getting there. Whenever I look at something I've done and it actually makes me laugh, like I kind of see it for the first time and I blurt out loud, I always know that's one of the good shots. Okay, it seems like it's moving a little too fast. Unfortunately, this is one of those cases where we almost have a little bit of a conflict between 8 frames a second and 12. Boop, boop, boop. But if the sound effects go diddle-diddle, yeah, diddle-diddle on the eye blink, need some sound effects for that. Diddle-diddle. Yeah, that's going to work. That's going to work. I can tell it's going to work. Dave, I know I've said it before, but the select and manipulate is so helpful. It saves time, keep consistency, and teaches. Well, that's right. What your person, forget who it was back up there, I guess it was Jason or Jaman, asking about run cycles. You know, you could go through and redraw every one of these poses. And the thing about it is that then you're going to have a theoretical argument about whether it's better or not, or whether there's some virtue to that. And I just, from my experience, there is no virtue to it, like none. I mean, it's not that it's not just better, it's that it's almost always worse. Because if you're a person of modest talent, which I would say I am, if you're going to draw 6 drawings, you're not going to draw 6 great drawings. You might draw 1 great drawing. If it's a walk cycle like this where you're toggling between 2 poses, one would hope that you would draw 2 great drawings, right? But you're not going to draw 6. And so something about what you're going to do is going to bring down the quality of the storytelling, whereby if you just reuse the same pose, it would elevate the storytelling, because that's actually the confident thing to do. It's like dialogue. If you've got dialogue where this character says, hey, blah, 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 and then this character says, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Hey, but, well, I guess it would be like this. I'm talking to you. Okay. So, where are you going for lunch? Starbucks? Oh, that's cool. Okay, so my point is, if you were shooting this with live action, would you move the camera and change the camera angle as a storytelling mechanism somewhere in the middle of that dialogue? And the answer is, you can, but it almost always harms the scene. Because when you got dialogue going on, the purpose, the driver of the storytelling at that time is the dialogue, typically. It's not an action scene, okay? So you save your camera moves for when they're actually germane to the storytelling. It's kind of, to me, I relate these things they're all kind of the same. You know, all that matters is what helps the storytelling. And this is actually, I have to say, this is working pretty well, even though it's obviously a pretty crude drawing and animation. and then this is what Mel's going to do. What would you expect Mel to do here? I'll tell you, you know exactly what he's going to do. He's going to do this. He's going to go that's what Mel would do. It's actually become kind of his trademark. I've never had to draw this whole thing, and I suspect these lines are not going to work. I don't know. It's just the scale of this thing is so like punitive that I'm not sure what I can get away with here. So I hit the N key. No. No, no, no. We're not going to do the we're not going to do the lines. In fact, I don't even think we're going to show the teeth. So for me, I'm going to say we're going to let maybe a pixel's worth sneak through. But that's it. That's what Mel would do. He would turn around and give that big, you know, that big old Melchizedek grin that he gives whenever he's in a embarrassing or compromising position. It's his thing. So, you know, for me, that's actually a big win too. It's a subtle win, but it is a win in the sense that we've got a great opportunity here to utilize our main character's, you know, little distinctive shtick, right? Right at the beginning of episode 2. This is literally the first shot in the show, so, you know, that's probably a good thing. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, probably this is how I should be doing this in Tahoma, I think. I should probably be actually just sketching these guys in and then deal with the color afterwards. Oops. Didn't mean to do that. Okay, so per UL's idea, I'll just go ahead and not do that with the blue because I'm because I can't speak. We're gonna animate the foot, right? So, bop, bop, bop. This color pretty much we need to close these shapes. Now we got a little bit of a weight problem here that we should fix. So just gonna hit the V key and draw that in. Sketchy, sketchy. We'll get this whole thing in here and filled, and then we'll deal with the actual color. I don't know if that's going to turn out to be the best strategy, but I'm guessing. So fill tool, V key. Okay, so now there's a few things here about this costuming that need a little bit of attention now that he's facing the audience and essentially frozen. Okay, first of all, there's like a thing here. You know, this color actually comes all the way down like that. He has his kind of a big belt, fairly thick belt, I would say, around his waist. Obviously, this is going to be a foot. And we need to put in the lines for his sandals. Yep, Yule is right with the comment about comedy. It's exactly right. No, I used to really get on my actors about that when I was doing when I was directing. You guys might wonder why I don't direct live action films anymore. And the reason is very simple. It's just not that fun anymore. You know, I've done 8 movies and you know, they're okay. You know, as far as the money side of making movies, you know, it's okay. It's okay, but it's not compelling enough to say I'm going to build my whole life around this. When I made the last movie, which would have been released 3 years ago, I kind of decided, you know what? Kind of been there, done that. I think that's it for now. I may come back to it, but and so I didn't really do anything in terms of entertainment media for a couple years, and then Valerie kind of got an idea for an anime type concept that she thought was kind of cool. So I'm like, why don't we just do that? Let's kind of move in the cartoon direction kind of thing. And we were working on that for a while. And then, well, what happened was I got in a conversation with my film distributor about this cartoon concept that I came up with 10 years ago. And he sparked to it. It was like, you know, the timing for that might be good now. Whereas when I originally threw the idea at him, you know, years ago, it was like, nah, the marketplace just doesn't have a place for that concept at this point. And he was right. You know, my shtick was, you know, my street cred or my audience was in the faith-based filmmaking area, and you know, and VeggieTales just completely ruled the roost there. I mean, it basically, the only thing that was of a cartoon or children's entertainment nature in that space that was selling was VeggieTales, and they outsold everybody 100 to 1. Like, nobody else was selling anything, and VeggieTales was doing really well. Now that company had a really a bit of a brutal history too. They got ahead of themselves, and Phil Vischer, you know, understandably got ambitious and wanted to make a movie, you know, an animated movie and CGI kind of thing, and so they did. And that movie, just because of all the business intricacies of managing a large-scale project like that, it bankrupted the company. It literally took them from king of the heap in their entertainment media space to bankrupt, like in a space of just a few months. They just really overextended themselves and tried to be way too ambitious with the production. And they paid for it in a big way. It cost Phil Vischer his baby, because he had to sell off VeggieTales to, you know, essentially a holding company that bought entertainment properties and just distributed them. And, you know, so that can happen. That can happen. Okay, yeah, so there's a problem here. I'm sorry, I made a boo-boo. Let me check the pacing on that foot. I don't think it's fast enough. No, I mean, you could go either way. I could go on 1s or 2s. Let's go on 2, or I'm sorry, yeah, let's go on 2s for the moment, and we'll live with it. So now what I got to do is actually get his arms taken care of. So here's the V key. I'm just going to redraw them over what's there and hope that it kind of sort of works. Which I think it will. This is so crude. I honestly have a bit of a hard time doing this. It's so crude looking. It's like I want to do it at a much larger scale and then shrink it down, which you could do, obviously. It's not like it's not an option. It's my show. I get to do what I want, you know. But, okay, so here he's got to have his armbands. F key. And you know what? I may get to the end of this, to tell you the truth, I may get to the end of this and say, you know what? This is not really quite good enough. This could definitely happen with this shot. I'm trying to continually remind myself that this is what the audience is going to actually see. It's so small. He is really small. And you can read it. The whole point is not to make it beautiful, but to make it readable, actually. Let me see. Let's hit the B key here and see if putting a line in there helps a bit. Probably, I would say probably little bit of line work. Again, I'm trying to just see this from the vantage point of what people will actually see on the screen. And then what we'll do is, once I get this dialed in, we'll just cut and paste it into the other pose that has the foot in a different position. Okay, so here I could totally see maybe just kind of delineating under his... that didn't work, boy. This is rather challenging. I guess I'll do it like this. And then hit N and see. Probably okay. Probably okay. Need to, whoops. Okay, that's interesting. I'm seeing a little bit of the difference between what my... Not very often I bump into this, where the difference between where your stylus actually hits the screen and what gets drawn There is obviously a slight difference that one needs to be somewhat aware of. So I am going to take my brush and go, and I know it's blue. I don't think it matters. What matters is that it's strong enough. I guess I'll go ahead and go to the line color. That's probably good. But that blue is actually going to help because it gives a slight hint of a shadow type situation. So now what I'm going to do is I want to make sure this is right before I start cutting and pasting. But yeah, I think we're in good shape. So I'm going to take this and actually just erase everything from here down. Here, I'm going to hit the S key and grab all that. Control C. Excuse me, guys. I just sneezed. Okay. We got a little bit of a hiccup down there at the bottom. But, you know, I think all in all, this shot's coming together almost surprisingly well. Now, I just covered up a little bit of the line. Is that going to... Yeah, that was probably kind of stupid. So, that's okay. What I'll do is I'll just do the same thing again. I'll grab this. Control C. Go to the next shot and hit Control V. And then, do we really need to fix the stuff that's a little sloppy down there? I don't know. Probably not. I think this would be a good time to turn the backgrounds back up and see what we really have here. Because, especially because we also need to consider the layering. You know, what's behind what. Boom. We'll deal with the shopkeeper later. In fact, I may wrap it up today, or at least for this morning, and just take a break. I'm probably getting ready. Usually about 3 hours, and I'm ready for a break. You know what? I honestly, I love it. I think it's actually going to be a great shot. One could criticize, frankly, to a degree, some, you know, compositionally. Are we quite on the rule of thirds? The composition is actually a little bit winky. The drawing, you know, the background, but with some sound effects, you know, think about that. Tinkle, tinkle, tinkle. Yeah, and I think it makes sense that right in the middle there, the idea that the shopkeeper is going to, you know, it would give the audience a breather. I think we need the audience to get a breath here, right here. So when we turn around and Mel starts tapping his foot, this is where we cut to a close-up of the shopkeeper, which is going to be a close-up. It's going to be a better drawing. We're going to really see some characterization, and then we'll just show this little tiny segment where he ducks into the alley, and then we'll be ready to cut to some normal, you know, type medium shots, medium and close-up type shots that give you a little bit better picture of the characters. But I think I think we're in good shape here. I think this is looking pretty good. Dirt says, "Yeah, appreciate that, Dirt." But in terms of how it feels, that's pretty close. I mean, the only thing I could see tweaking maybe, and we can always, if we had to, we could render this out and maybe make some modifications, or even use the plastic tool. Actually, we could probably get away with murder with plastic tool in this scene. Actually, now that I think about it, one thing I'm seeing is, yeah, well, okay. The scale there seems about right, I guess. The scale there seems large. And he just pokes... Yeah, see, there his head's smaller. This is too big. So I'm going to hit the S key. This guy needs to be shrunk down a bit. And I'm going to stick his head out a little further, too, because you can't really see it behind the tent pole. It's questionable whether that other tent pole should even be in there. But again, for the audience, all we really need to do is see that color. When you see the motion, you know what's going on. Now, if we zoom in, this is probably a real mess. It is, because one reason is because this sketch line needs to get erased. So I'm going to hit the E key in selective mode, get rid of the sketch lines, and now just for completeness, I'm going to go ahead and just draw in a little bit more detail here, and maybe even like that, so we actually see that's too much, but the idea is that we'll see a little bit of his arm peeking through. Don't know if that's exactly going to work, but we'll give it a try. I think that'll help. It just gives it a little bit. Okay, so again, this is the actual size that people are going to see. Boom. Yeah, that's not bad. This part I have questions about at this point. I think that it might be the quintessential case where sound effects are going to be absolutely essential to making it work. And arguably, I think the pause might be a bit long. Yeah, this is definitely questionable. I will say let's just hit Control X and make it 2 frames and see how it feels. Okay, pretty much works with the, let's do it this way. I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to instead hit Alt up arrow so that I'm actually taking those frames out of the whole sequence, because what I did wrecked the timing of the shopkeeper. Yeah, and it's still wrong actually. What really needs to happen here is boop. So he pops out. This is probably going to be, let's hit Control X. And I would say it's kind of important that this happen quickly enough to cause Mel to stop. So let's look at this in slow motion. Peak. Okay, yeah, we only need 2 frames of peak, I think. Peak. I'm actually gonna smack it up there 1 more frame. Let's see how that feels in real time. Whoops. Again, we're kind of trying to pack a lot of visual entertainment value in a really small space here. I think it works. I'm going to go with that. I think I'm going